Alright, so today's lesson is going to be on lap marks. A lot of you guys think you have to whip your gun at the end of your spray pattern to not get a lap mark. Guess what? Wrong! It's not true. Okay, so let me tell you how you do it. Now, I'm going to tell you this. If one of my guys whips his gun on my job site, he's going to do it once. The second time, he's packing up his shit and he's out of here. Okay, that's the way it is. Why? Because we may not have the ground covered up. I am not buying somebody concrete. I am not buying roof. I am not going to do that. So, let me tell you why. And go, well, you should cover it all up. Well, okay, you pay the labor cost to cover all that crap up. You know what? The labor cost and all that extra material that you absolutely don't need. Okay, I'm going to tell you guys how that you do this without getting lap marks. I never get lap marks. I don't care when I'm painting, tilt up wall. Doesn't matter. These guys say, oh, well, you got to start your pattern in the corner and then you go all the way to the other corner so that you don't get a lap mark. Bullshit. Bullshit. That's not true. I can spray from right here to right here, and I use that as a guide. I'm just showing you, usually when you're spraying, you have something you're using as a guide for your stop mark, when you're going to stop to switch and go back the other way. Now, so one of the things you do not ever make your spray go like this. Unless you're in a corner, sometimes you want to hit this part, you want to paint this, so you turn your gun, and you'll actually do your turn around right there. Okay, so when you come to your end of your turnaround, you actually speed up a little bit, trigger, and then go back the other way. Speed a little bit, trigger. Okay, sometimes I won't even trigger and I still won't get a lap mark because I do it so fast. You watch me spray, then listen to what I'm saying right now on some of my spray videos, and you'll see when I hit the end, sometimes I don't even trigger and I'll just boop like that, and guess what? There's no lap mark. Nothing. Okay, now I'm going to tell you why people get them, and this is pretty much the reasons why. There's basically 4 reasons why you get a lap mark. Number 1, you have a blown out tip or using too big of a tip, okay, for the material you're using. Number 2, you have your material too thin. Number 3, I just forgot it. You're using a pole gun is one of them. And the other one is, trying to think for a second, your pressure is up too high. So 1, blown out tip. 2, pressure's too high. 3, you can make these in any order you feel like doing. You're using too big of a tip, or using too big of a tip, your material is too thin. 4, you're using a pole gun. Okay, the problem, okay, I'm going to tell you, so if your tip is too big, you're putting on the material already too heavy. So when you get to your turnaround, it's going to be a little bit too heavy, and it's almost going to be like a run hanging down the wall. Well, those will show up. Okay, so what you need to do is get a smaller tip out, or make your material thicker, because if your material's too thin, it'll do the same thing. If you have too much pressure, you should be knowing, because it should be bouncing back at you fiercely, and when you go to change, you know, and your trigger's really hard to pull. If you pull your trigger and it's like pow like that, your pressure's up too high. Okay, so you can't trigger properly because you don't have your pressure set right, and when you go to switch, you leave a lap mark. Okay, and the pole gun. Now, let me just tell you one of the reasons you never use a pole unless you absolutely have to. So check all those things when you're doing it first. Now, if you're using a pole gun on a door like this, when there's no reason to be using it, you can reach everything. You know, I could see maybe somebody had a 12-inch extension because they're short. I get it. You know, if you're short, that's okay. Those 12-inch extensions are okay. That's about the most you should put on. But let's say you had a 12 extension just to reach the top, you know, because you can't reach that high. But you know, this is what happens when you pull the spray gun. Let's take a look at the spray gun real quick. I'm probably going to be doing a rebuild video on this gun too, by the way. This one's you can see it's getting loose. See, it's no good. All right, so anyway, on a gun, on the spray gun, what happens, so when you have a pole, you have your pole attached to right here somewhere. Either you have the small threads or the big threads, either one. You have your pole attached here, and the actual spray, the trigger pulls, and it releases the paint in through here, and then it has to travel all the way up that pole to the spray tip, and then go through. Especially the longer the pole, the more your spray pattern will be, your spray will be actually misatomized. Okay, so when it travels up that pole, you lose some of your atomization. So what you end up doing is you have to try and turn up your pressure a little bit. Oh, Mike, that's what I'm doing wrong. You have to turn up your pressure. Guess what? You're overpressurizing. That's why you end up with problems with poles. And so when your spray comes out, if you spray, when you're spraying the wall, you'll watch the center of your spray will be, you know, pretty well covered, and then the outsides, you'll have to go a little bit too fast, and you'll see the spray end up like a banana, like that. When you're going across the wall, you're losing proper atomization here and proper atomization here, and you see the edges of that fan will be spattery. Okay, that's because your atomization is lost by using that spray pole. So that's why you don't use one unless you have to. Okay, so like, let's say you're doing commercial wall and you're spraying commercial wall, and you start spraying it this way with a pole. You're going to see lap mark here, you're going to see lap mark, you're going to see spray mark going through the wall. It's going to be tiger striped. Wait a minute, Mike, that's why that's happening. Okay, so what do you do to prevent that? You know what, in a commercial wall, when it's empty and you're blowing and going and you're just getting paint on the wall, you know, most of the time you're going to be using a pole, and that's perfectly acceptable. You're inside a warehouse, you're going through, you know, 10,000 gallons or whatever, you know, 1,000 gallons, whatever it is, however big it is. So the way to do that is to spray up and down. It just doesn't show up as much. It's still there, but you won't see it as much. So you set up your gun to spray up and down, which is the only time you'll ever spray up and down. You guys see, unless you're doing like me, where you're doing it, you go into an edge, you go around and you turn around and then come down to not blow off this corner. So that's just some of the technique. Anyway, but that's about lap marks. I just wanted to real quick throw that in there with the pole and why the pole doesn't work good for this type of stuff, so that you understand the technology of it, and so you can understand that I am right. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes you just have to be right. Somebody has to be right. So anyway, the guys that fight this, that's okay. Go ahead and fight it, and just keep working extra hard and keep coming home wondering why you don't have any money in your pocket. You know, keep doing that. That's fine. And then maybe someday you'll try what I'm saying and you'll learn something, you know. And, you know, but it was funny when the guys used to work for the guy that I used to work for. He'd be like, he'd be talking to me, whispering to me, guess what? He's not coming back tomorrow. I'd be like, really? He's like, nah, look at, because he'd tell me everything they're doing wrong. Because I don't know, I just did it right just because I learned from the guy I learned from, was his brother-in-law. So I kind of learned from him. Then I got in his big jobs, and he's like, guess what? He's getting fired today. And I said, yeah. I said, what's going on? He says, see how he's rolling that wall? He's rolling that like his grandma's kitchen. He's sitting there tipping that thing off and everything else. This is a commercial building. We need to get the paint on fast. He should be globbing it on and let the runs fall down. I'm like, well, isn't that what we're trying to do? Just cover it? He goes, yeah, who cares? It's just a big, ugly, fucked up wall. We're just throwing on. This guy's trying to paint it like it's grandma's kitchen. Look at him. What an idiot. That's what he'd say. So it was funny. He'd get me laughing, you know. But you know, he was serious though. But he was. You never knew if he was serious if he wasn't, you know, until after work. You know, then he would. When he wasn't working, he was totally cool. You know, I used to call him till actually he died about 2 years ago. I was going to go over and visit him. I hadn't visited him in a while, and I kept on trying to get up there, and drive right by his house. He's was up in Auburn, and I drive right by his house, and I'm like, fuck, I wish I could just stop right now, and with the job we were doing, we couldn't, you know, and just go visit him for a minute, because he was an absolute genius with painting. All right, I'll talk to you in the next video.